voter fraud, I do know how to speak, affecting the outcome of elections is basically non-existent in the United States, but it is being used to cause fear and mistrust in our elections and to vote or to pass voter suppression legislation. So what changes should be made to protect voting rights?
Come on now. We know that voter fraud, you go back election after election after election. There's never been any realistic, any numbers that supposedly when there was voter fraud overturn any kind of election. We all know what's behind that. We all know what's behind that. So the voter fraud, all of that kind of stuff, and it makes it harder, and you have to, if you're 95 years old, you got to call in and request your ballot and all of that, and these numbers got to line up with this right here. Listen, that is no different than back in the 60s when there were poll taxes and other kind of things and litmus tests that our people have to do to say that we were eligible or that we were intelligent and we were smart enough to do certain things. Those are just roadblocks. Right. And we know those roadblocks. So before I go any further, I want to stand up. I want to acknowledge my mother. In fact, as my mother and my two sisters was here. Would you please stand up? I think my mom's, I don't know if she's asleep or what, but can I get a hand for them? But all the stuff that I've done and the hard work that I put in was partially, wholeheartedly, because I'm from like my opponent. I was raised by a single mother. My father's been deceased since 1969. My mother had to raise 6 kids all by herself, and I think she did a pretty good job. Right. So this kind of dovetails into what I was talking about, what women goes through. And we, as men, we do not give them enough recognition for what they do to raise us as men and my opponent where we are right now. First of all, I want to say this right. Most of you do not know that this is the first time since Reconstruction we've had 2 black male candidates in a runoff in United States history in a rural district. So I think we deserve applause for that.
I'm going to ask, just to make sure that we get your specifics, what changes, and you'll have 30 more seconds, do you think we need to make to protect voting rights?
Well,
and you have
I think that, first of all, I think we should have passed it or reintroduced the John Lewis voting bill. The John Lewis voting bill addresses a lot of stuff that we're going through right now. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean a hill of beans when the Congress passes it and we get 2 senators, Christian Gillibrand, Arizona, and the gentleman and Joe Manchin. But it is sad that we as Democrats, all the stuff that we've done, and hard as we fight, we get in the late game, some in our own party want to pass stuff and stand in line to pass stuff as simply as the John Lewis voting bill. So that's my short answer, is the John Lewis voting bill.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is going to go to you first. More than half of Texans spend more than 30% of their household income on housing costs. There are only 30 units available per 100 extremely low-income renters. The wage in Texas it would take to afford housing is $20.90 per hour. The average renter in Texas makes $19.56. Wages are low and living expenses are high. How would you address housing access, affordability, and equity?
Well, I think something in the immediate thing that we can do is that we can, and I've already proposed this. I've already written this to the Speaker of the House. When I get there, what I intend to is offer up a bill because gas prices, we know that they went down and now they're creeping right back up. You can't really buy gas under $4 a gallon. So I propose $2,500 per vehicle up to $4,000. That's something we can do in the immediate, getting back to when we talk about the limited resources we have right now, we have to utilize that. So, and also what the governor could do, the governor could freeze a lot of taxes that we have right now. For example, it would usually be in the fall to where there would be some kind of tax avoidance or a tax where in essence we wouldn't have to pay tax when the kids are going to school. So something just as basic as that, where the governor can immediately make a difference before we can ever get to something like this. Because if this doesn't mean a hill of beans when we talk about the high cost of housing, and we pass it into Congress, but we need 60 votes in the Senate, we can't even get it by.
Right.
And this is what we have to do when we're in power. We have to utilize, when we're in power, the worst decision that we made was that when Merrick Garland that seat was held up, that Senate, at U.S. Justice, Supreme Court Justice was held up by Mitch McConnell, and we as Democrats, we didn't fight hard enough for that seat, and that in turn is kind of backdoored us to where we are right now, to where they've essentially overridden the road. So we have to take care of, do what was necessary, all this stuff that we're talking about, how the high cost of housing, talking about getting a rebate for gas, and looking at level 1 hospital and high-tech jobs and bringing it into the district.
Thank you so much.
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if we pass it into Congress and we can't get the Senate to act.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Jefferson?